What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tru Element 78 in the building with.
A very angry, reigning, and defending Mondo Lucha Hall of Famer, the X-Man, Xavier Mustafa.
And it is I, the infamous one, the natural, Chris Black.
This is take two of us trying to record this episode. We had a very good first take, and we were at the end of it. So, pardon us if it feels like this may be a little bit rushed. But, anyways, we're
Ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a new ad out for a new podcast moderator.
silence, Mustafa. Anyways,
If you're
we're here.
interested, please apply.
We are
Oh,
here to talk about the Undertaker, The Last Ride series. They hit us with a bonus episode. It was originally listed at 5. They gave us a sixth one, which is called Tales from the Dead Man or Tales with the Dead Man. And it's a collection of stories from the Undertaker's illustrious career within the WWE. And so we'll kick things off, jump right in with story number 1 that they talked about, which was the debut of the Undertaker. Which leading up to that was the setup for Survivor Series was this gigantic egg that nobody knew what it was. They figured it was going to be the debut of a wrestler. The boys in the back, nobody really knew what was going on. And Undertaker was talking about how he was so nervous that Vince McMahon was going to make him the Eggman. He was going to make him shave his head, and they were going to put him in an egg costume, and he's going to have to go out there and try to get this gimmick over. And so that was like his biggest fear. And he says eventually he ended up getting a phone call, and it was from Vince McMahon. And when he answered the phone, Vince said, "Hey, is this my Undertaker?" And he was taken aback because he didn't know what the hell he was talking about, and he just agreed, like, yeah, this is your Undertaker or whatever. He's like, I don't know what an Undertaker was or anything like that. He's like, all I knew is that I wasn't the Eggman. And so, like I said, this was for Survivor Series in 1990, which was the debut of the Gooker, which is who came out of the egg, and then the debut of the Undertaker as well. What you guys think of this story, and did you learn anything new?
I just want to say that if the Undertaker would have been the Eggman, we wouldn't have an Undertaker, we wouldn't have a Kane, we wouldn't have a Paul Bearer, wouldn't have an Inferno match, wouldn't have Hell in a Cell, and what would they have called Dr. Robotnik in Sonic? It would change the gimmicks of everything.
Yeah, that's yeah, that is true. Like we would have missed out on many. I mean, we would never had the streak. I mean, there's a lot of things that pro wrestling would have lost out on if he was just some shit gimmick called the Eggman. But it was. I know this isn't a story that isn't unfamiliar to a lot of people that have heard this story many times before, but it was different getting the Undertaker's perspective because you can really hear like the angst and the anxiety of not wanting to come out and debut as coming out of an egg. I guess that was a point in WWE where there's a lot of goofy gimmicks going around, and Undertaker was just like, "Oh Lord, here we go." Like, I mean, I, I don't know. Maybe WCW didn't have as many as the goofy gimmicks, as I'm reminiscing about Oz and shit. But oh, so he was kind of concerned, should I say, with where his position was going to be and going into the company.
Then another one of the stories that the Undertaker tells is about Bruce Pritchard and him on the road and getting lost in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This was when Bruce Pritchard was playing the role of Brother Love, who was managing the Undertaker. And he says they're driving around trying to get to the next town. They end up getting lost, and they're in a very shady neighborhood. Bruce is trying to figure out where they are on the map. Undertaker pulls over at the behest of Bruce Pritchard, and Bruce rolls down the window and starts asking people on the street how to get back to the freeway. So he says one guy starts to approach the car, is at the window, and he's like, yeah, I can tell you how to get there for maybe, 10, 20, $15 or something like that. And then Undertaker says he's laying back listening to this, and then he starts seeing other people start to surround the car. And so he rises up out of his seat to look at the guy outside the window, and they said as soon as the guy saw him, he pretty much jumped out of his skin, backed up, tripping all over himself and everything like that. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. That guy looks like he just murdered somebody. That guy looks like he's dead or something like that. You guys need to get the hell up out of here. And mind you, this series is animated. And if any of you guys ever saw well, it's not animated like in the same way as the WWE story time was, but they have drawings and illustrations. Yeah, storyboards, and it just makes it hilarious because they got the guy jotting out an actual picture of the neighborhood and with directions towards the freeway and everything like that. And I thought this was a funny story, even though it was just a little tidbit of a story. But I thought it was a little interesting, and just seeing how naive Bruce Pritchard is to, after a show, mind you, which so it's nighttime in the seedy neighborhood, to just start asking people for directions.
Well, I'm the only one who thinks there's a little bit of revisionist history going on with the story, because from what it sounds like, the drawing of dude looks like K-Fed, just some white dude dressed up like a thug, with the chain and everything on. I truly believe that maybe they came across some black dudes and they're the ones who was like, hey, let me hold something, for these directions. And I could see, like, I don't know, I've never come across any threatening looking white dudes in no seedy part of town. Now, I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I've never seen like a white, I've never seen that ever. As much as I've seen them in movies, I have never seen a white gang or any white gangsters. So I don't know. I think that they changed the story just a bit. Maybe they didn't want to offend nobody, but I could so see a group of black dudes seeing the Undertaker rise up and be like, oh shit, that dude look crazy, and have that type of reaction.
I just want to know how Undertaker was driving. However, he was laying down and was able to sit up. But
drive like a black dude with this leaning back.
Have you guys ever gotten lost on the road? I know you guys been wrestling since before GPSs. So.
Ooh.
Mustafa,
you want to handle this one?
Back in the day, we had this thing called MapQuest. Now, as reliable as MapQuest was, every once in a while, it would not update to let you know when construction is going on. Sometimes whole roads will not be there.
Or they changed the name of the road.
Yes. So you get your MapQuest directions, and you would try to figure out where you're at any time with those MapQuest directions, and most of the time you get where you need to go, or you get completely lost.
And most of the wrestling shows up in upper Wisconsin or northern Wisconsin is in some what do they call them, shithole towns, like in the middle of fucking nowhere. So it's not like you can pull over and ask directions. And I don't know if you want to. You're talking about seedy part of towns. Like I've seen a bunch of hicks before and some rednecks, so I don't know if I want to ask them for directions. Yeah, we've gotten lost several times. And you know what? We'd always blame the person who got the MapQuest directions. It was, do not write them down, print them out.
Oh, don't ever dare do that. Man.
So
sometimes we'll print them out, leave them at home, and be like, oh, we got time to get those. But
yes,
now we got GPS right in the phone. Thank you, Jesus.
I swear, this is before GPS. Yes. Those were some rough times.
So for those of you who didn't know, these are two old-ass bastards here. Which is why I must retire Xavier Mustafa. Anyways, moving on.
Before MapQuest, people use atlases. I'm like, whoa. You ever tried to drive with an atlas?
Used to. Don't Armani still use an atlas?
I wouldn't be surprised if he has one.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was rough. That takes me back.
All right. So another story that they tell is about the Undertaker and his disdain for getting in and out of Madison Square Garden. He tells the story of how him and Paul Bearer, well, actually, before all of that, how once you got into the arena, you were perfectly fine because you had security, you had police, you had escorts everywhere and everything like that. But whenever you would try to get into the arena or actually leave the arena, you'd be swarmed by fans. They'd be beating up on your car, surrounding it. He was talking about how they had animated with fans like cracking the windshield, and he's like, you're worried about, did you take the insurance on the rental car and different things like that. And so him and Paul Bearer had actually devised a plan where they would park down, I believe you said it was like a Ramada Inn in New York. They would park there in the parking garage, and then an ambulance would come and pick them up, and it would get them in and out of the arena. And he said that worked for several years. until it didn't. And he said they left the arena, they got back to their car, and there was just tons and thousands of fans outside, just like wanting autographs and swarming them and everything like that. Which it begs the question of do you think they got caught up? Do you think somebody stooged them out, or people saw a pattern? Because it seems like WWE did used to run the Garden a lot more than they do these days. But I could still only imagine maybe 4 times a year. And somebody just always like, man, every time WWE's in town, there's this ambulance that stops at this hotel here.
Yeah, I think because a lot of times it's no secret what hotel the wrestlers are going to be in. Even before I got into the business, I was hearing people always like, oh, when WWE came to Milwaukee, oh, they're going to stay at, this hotel. If you want to get autographs and stuff or whatever, get a room at the hotel so you can, sit at the bar and stuff. So if people knew the hotel that wrestler was going to be in, and like you said, they just noticed that on the nights of this show, this big dumbass ambulance comes driving in and out conveniently before the show and after show, you're kind of going to raise a couple eyebrows and probably want to investigate it. So that, or yes, someone stooged them out. Which I'm shocked because this was kind of ingenious. I'm surprised they haven't tried a lot of this trickery before, when old school heels used to get like mega heat and they'd have to like basically run out of there and change in their car because they didn't want to get mobbed by the fans.
How was it for you, Trevor, when you had to leave the arena? Did you leave with the rest of the crew? Did you stay for the whole show? I mean, did you leave in the middle of the show?
Stayed until the end of the show. That's just basic. I don't want to say standard policy, but you don't want to seem rude and leave beforehand. That's just not a good look. But afterwards, I was riding with Juice Robinson at the time, and when we left, I don't remember seeing any fans. So maybe we were just on the wrong side of the building, or maybe they just didn't give a shit, or maybe it's because like we didn't have to change or anything. We just left when the show was over with. So maybe there was a crowd a little bit afterwards once some of the guys, showered and changed and all that. So maybe we missed it, or we just was not on the right side of the building. But no, I didn't see anything and have to fight through any crowds or whatever.
Mustafa, how about you after shows? I know you do Mondo Lucha, where you're one of the most popular figures there. Obviously, you're a Hall of Famer, so you've done it all. How do you feel about the fans?
That is true. Besides the slip on the name there, thank you for putting me over. I appreciate it. It doesn't happen often. But in any event, yeah, after the shows, there's a bunch of people that stay around. Excuse me. That stay around and hang out, and I go and mingle with them because, if they don't pay their money to come see me, then hurts the company as a whole. And I'm not saying that like it's all on me, but that's on everybody. And I don't want to piss some fan off and be like, oh man, last time I tried to talk to Mustafa after the show, he was a complete dick. Like, no, I don't ever want that to happen. So I go and I chat with people, take pictures. Man, I wish I got tagged in every picture I took at Mondo Lucha because there was a lot. And I love doing it.
I know you guys talk about the angle that you guys ran as the Urban Horsemen down in Illinois, where you guys had major heat. Did you guys ever have to sneak in and out of the building, or were the fans just playing along, or was it real to some of them?
No, nobody got ridiculous or anything like after the fact or anything. Like, I mean, we got the heat, but not like that Jim Cornette, we trying to kill you legitly right now. Watch for the shank, yeah, not that bad.
No, I give it to the fans of Coal City. They were some pretty diehard wrestling fans. They knew about the whole dynamic of pro wrestling, basically. I mean, they gave us tons of heat during the show because we're heels. We're supposed to get heat. They enjoyed the performance. But afterwards, no, it was more or less they were just like, oh, man, you guys are cool, blah, blah, blah. So it was more admiration afterwards than just straight up heat. I mean, I guess we could have healed it up a little bit. But then we probably would have been fighting some pitchforks and tiki torches.
It was one of those things where you was like, man, we might take this too far. We might not end up going home tonight. Because you never know if people are just really enjoying the feud or if they low key racist. You don't know.
Right. Especially when they're flying their Confederate flags.
But I will say, you know what? Even though yes, they had Confederate flags and stuff like that, I really don't. I really can't say any of them were racist because none of them said anything racist. They definitely supported, Stone and Blaze and Hardcore Craig, but they could have been like, get them in words, you know what I'm saying? Like, they never did anything disrespectful like that. So we still love y'all, Cold City.
Outside of the one comment by one fan, I don't forgot who heard it, but they were just like, they told the son, like, do you remember the quote? Something like, "That's what we do, son." Like,
no, I don't know that.
Yeah, someone that told him like, "That's what you do, son." Like, we beat those people down or something like that. Some real like out of pocket comment.
Some police officer.
Maybe.
But anyways, I'm telling these stories out of order, but another story Undertaker told was about a time they were all in Kuwait, which was a dry country, so no alcohol. So all the guys were getting kind of stir crazy because obviously, they back in the day they partied. They didn't have video games and carry those things around like they do nowadays and everything like that. So them getting stir crazy, they're sitting back, they're playing cards, playing dominoes. Of course, this is the Undertaker's crew, the BSK crew, which was the Bone Street crew, which had Yokozuna and the Godfather and all of these different people in it. And so while they're sitting there and they're playing cards and everything like that, Undertaker says he's bored, so he starts lighting matches. And as he's lighting the matches, he's just throwing them and flicking them, lighting a match, flicking it, lighting a match, flicking it. And he ends up throwing one that goes over Yokozuna's head, but it doesn't fly completely over him. It lands in the back of his head in his ponytail. And Undertaker says, like, he starts like smelling and seeing smoke. And he says Yokozuna turns around and his hair is on fire. And so then he's like, you got a room full of guys just beating the piss out of Yokozuna trying to put his hair out.
And taking liberties.
Which is hilarious. It makes you want to go back and see when this may have been. Like, Yoko had long hair one week, and then the next week he had
a bald spot at the top somewhere. Or it's getting kind of thin.
Right. So I might have to go back and actually see if I can figure out when it was they were in Kuwait and Yokozuna was in the company.
One example of someone playing too much, even though alcohol was not a factor during that. I can't imagine Undertaker just lighting matches and just trying to hit people with them. That seems kind of out of character.
Right. So, is there Mustafa? You got anything for this story?
No, not really. Look like some boys took some liberties on old Yoko there. But, it said they was stomping him the hell out. He was still on fire.
Then next up was my favorite story from the entire episode, which involved the Godfather and the Undertaker. And once again, they're in a hotel room, but this time they're in the United States. And they're playing dominoes. They got a room full of like 15, 20 other wrestlers, they said. And Undertaker and Godfather have been drinking a little bit, drinking a little bit of the whiskey, drinking a little bit of that cognac, all of that good stuff, all those spirits got in them. And they end up arguing over the Godfather's hat. Undertaker's complimenting the hat, talking about how much he likes it. He wants to go get one like it. Godfather's trying to give him the hat, get him to wear the hat. Undertaker keeps refusing. He does this several times. They keep going back and forth. So what ends up happening, Undertaker's like, no, I don't want to wear the damn hat. So he storms off, goes to the bathroom to take a piss. Next thing you know, Undertaker says he's in the bathroom. He's don. And he's like, he turns around and he says the door isn't breaking down. He said, but he sees the frame of the door coming at him. And so Godfather has kicked the door off of his frame and is demanding the Undertaker to take this hat and wear it. So the Undertaker says, and I thought this was, he misspoke in the episode, but they animated it, so he didn't misspeak. He says that he takes the door and he puts it on. And so they have it animated. He put his head through the door and started wearing this thing like Flavor Flav wears a clock around his neck. Then he makes his way to the balcony and just throws the door off of the balcony. He says everybody in the party is just staring at him now. He turns around and Godfather's down in a 3-point stance. And he tackles the Undertaker in between the two beds, and they're wrestling and fighting over this damn hat. And so finally, the Undertaker gives in, and he says, "I wear the damn hat." And so they had Godfather on this episode, and he's talking about, he's like, "Hey, eventually I won." He wore the damn hat. And all I could think about while watching this was the movie They Live with Roddy Piper when they were wrestling over the sunglasses. And it's like, just wear the damn glasses.
Let's see. In this instance, it wasn't the Undertaker that was playing too much. It was the Godfather. Like, have you ever been around someone who drinks and just plays just a little too much, where you have to kind of like put hands on them in order to calm them down? Yeah, I don't like. Godfather kind of sounds like an angry drunk. Maybe he didn't have no bag that night or something.
What's one of the wildest road stories that you guys have that you've experienced?
There's been a lot of instances involving alcohol. Some fights backstage. Two guys got into it, and a guy jumped on him and was basically giving him some like hilarious looking forearms. Like, now in a real life fight, unless you throwing elbows, this dude was throwing forearms like he was working a match, and like the guy that was getting hit, he was the bigger man. It was just like, even still offered dude a ride home afterwards. So, because he understood that alcohol was involved and dude was just extra drunk. But other than that, I probably missed out on a lot of the insane things that happened. Like, I was always not on the show where there was like a bar fight or something wild that went down.
Chris Black not being booked. What a shocker.
See. See, now that lets you know when I'm around, shit don't happen.
Oh, you trying to
know better?
You trying to say you're the Undertaker of Wisconsin?
Something like that.
Wait, is that a good thing? Is that something to be proud of? When I'm around, nothing happens.
Yeah, because they know better not to try.
No fun happens when Chris Black is around.
That's why I'm the one that's married.
Oh man. Anything from Xavier Mustafa? You got any tales?
Oh, road stories?
Come on, man. Your name is Mustafa. You gotta have something. In more ways than one, you gotta have something.
You've been at a couple of the bar fights.
I mean, yeah, there was a bar fight that started. It was kind of weird. I don't know how it started, to be honest, but the catalyst was when a female slapped one of the wrestlers in the face. The wrestler oversold it. And then everybody got to fighting. There were some forearms to the back given. And then everybody had to leave and everybody got in their cars and went home early.
Where was this?
The other roads, huh?
Where was this?
Green Bay area?
I think it was in the Green Bay area somewhere.
All right.
So,
well, we'll save the next story for the next story, which involved the flight from hell, the infamous flight from hell. And this happened on a flight back to the United States from the UK. I believe they said they were in Birmingham. This may have been the Insurrection pay-per-view. I believe that's the clip that they showed, where it was Undertaker taking on Stone Cold and Triple H, and I forgot who the Undertaker's tag team partner was. This was during the two-man power trip story angle. But Austin hit Undertaker in the side of the head with his knee brace on accident, splitting his ear open. And the WWE was under like strict guidelines. They had to be out of the building by a certain time. So they said the Undertaker could even either stayed in the UK and got bandaged up and flew back by himself, or he could just thug it out and fly back with the rest of the crew. He elected to fly back with the rest of the crew, And for those of you who are not familiar, the Flight from Hell is very infamous within the wrestling community. It's where you had Ric Flair opening his robe and exposing himself to stewardesses. You had Mr. Perfect wrestling with Brock Lesnar in the aisleway, and just a whole bunch of other crazy stuff that happened on this flight. And one of the main things on there as well was you had Vince McMahon wrestling Kurt Angle, and this happened all next to the Undertaker while he's trying to take a nap. He says that he hears the noise, he peeks up and he sees Kurt and Vince McMahon wrestling, and then he says he kind of passes out again and he looks up again and he sees that Kurt Angle has mounted Vince McMahon. And he's like, what the hell is Kurt doing? Why is he on top of Vince?
Pause.
So Undertaker rises up as he does, gets behind Kurt and starts to choke him out. And he says the only thing that Kurt could say to him was like, Taker, you're choking me. And he ends up, and he says everybody on the flight is yelling at him, hey, they're just playing. And Undertaker's like, what? Oh, they're just playing. He just lets Kurt's limp body go. And he says he goes back, sits back down, and goes back to sleep.
Now, I done heard stories like when they talked about the Montreal screw job and how Vince McMahon had the Undertaker with him when he went to confront Bret Hart. So I always kind of figured that the Undertaker was, I don't want to say like the bodyguard of Vince McMahon, but he was the keeper of order, as we'll find out later when it comes to Wrestler's Court. But doesn't surprise me that he would immediately see someone jumping on Vince McMahon and he kind of come to the aid of Vince McMahon rather than just try to, separate it. He went towards the aggressor, i.e. Kurt Angle, because I could imagine that probably more than once someone's kind of gotten to the point where they wanted to put hands on Vince, and Undertaker was probably like, nah, that ain't about to happen. So,
you know what? I mean, yeah, it was Vince McMahon, but I think Undertaker too will probably do that to anybody because all he got up and saw, apparently according to the the graphic that was on the screen, he saw Vince McMahon in an ankle lock, and you got to get that off immediately, otherwise he's going to break his ankle.
Plus, he probably didn't know what state of mind Kurt was in or what the altercation was about. So all you saw was your boss basically getting his ass handed to him.
It's like, Vince,
so you wanted to get dude off of him.
I saw Vince taking pills out of my bag.
And my God, can you imagine Vince McMahon, like, you fairly new in the company, and this man just wants to challenge you on a flight to a wrestling match? I mean, you're an Olympic gold medalist, won your gold medal with a freaking broken neck, and your boss wants to roll around with you?
Has there ever been a promoter you guys worked for that you would have bit the bullet for in the way Undertaker has for Vince McMahon?
I think Mustafa will agree. If anyone kind of got a little aggressive with Armani, we'd probably step in.
Yeah, they'll have to get the mans. To a certain, I don't say to a certain extent. Actually, pretty much most of them that I work with, are pretty good guys. So I wouldn't defend any of them. Like the Mondo Lucha guys, I will fight for them. Armani, I will fight for them.
I think this podcast has been a little bit too positive. What promoter would you not give a damn if they got their ass beat?
Oh, wow.
I plead the fifth.
Well, there's always he who shall not be named. I probably wouldn't give a shit if someone beat the hell out of him.
Even that person, I would jump in.
No, please. You probably owed him some money, so I'd probably be helping him out, helping the guy out.
Me and that person, we've had beef for a long time, but we've actually been making progress. Our relationship, if you will. So I would give this person the benefit of the doubt. I would give them hands for him too. Now,
you still talk
that
to
person? What? JB.
JB, you still talk to that dude?
JB. Oh, you talking about that guy?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the other guy.
No.
I thought me and another guy I'll fight him. That that guy. That's kind of tough. Because we kind of been bonded lately because we got a mutual friend that recently passed away too. So we kind of buried the hatchet. So yeah, I don't think there's anybody I throw under the bus. You
And
edited that out.
I'm not editing shit. Anyway,
That whole question.
I'm trying to think if there's a specific promoter that I don't mind shitting on.
There's a couple in Tennessee.
Oh,
That if I can name some of them, but yeah, there's the one guy I can't remember his name, but he walked out on us and left us unpaid. I was about to take the ring ropes home with me because he didn't pay us. You know who you are, you piece of shit. I was trying to beat you up. How you on house arrest running wrestling shows? I don't understand.
um, there was dude. I don't want to say his name wrong. I don't give a fuck about saying his name. I think his name was Sam. He ran Windy City. Was it Windy City Professional Wrestling in Chicago? Yeah, fuck, dude. He shorted me and TC once. Um, not gonna name names, but we do. Well, I'm gonna name one. Rashi smacked the hell out of a promoter once. I think they made up afterwards. I think it's cool now, but I don't think anyone jumped in when that happened.
I mean, we talking about Rashi Brown too, though. So as much as I'm cool with that promoter, I don't want to see him get beat up. But Rashi is a whole different beast. I'm gonna jump in there and try to break it up, but I ain't finna come in there and throw no hands.
it's like he said Rashi is like Debo, and he was like, "You want some too, old man?" No.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Nicest guy in the world. Just don't piss him off.
And then one of the final segments that they had was discussing Wrestler's Court, which I'm going to ask you guys, have you guys ever had a Wrestler's Court or been a part of something similar to Wrestler's Court? But anyways, what Wrestler's Court was, it was pretty much Undertaker was always judge, jury, and executioner. And you could be brought into Wrestler's Court for just violations of the wrestler code and just being disrespectful or not respecting the business. They said one of the examples they brought up was, I believe it was Al Snow and Mick Foley were brought up in Wrestler's Court because they had left Al Snow at the airport so they could go visit an amusement park. And they said the
Bob
punishment.
Holly. They left Bob Holly.
Oh yeah, they left Bob Holly. That's what it was. And they said the punishments were usually you pay for somebody's hotel room, you buy some liquor. Like they said, it was always pretty much done for a laugh. I'm pretty sure there was some embarrassing things in there as well. I think the rumor's always been that's kind of where the Moppy with Perry Saturn stuff came from, was Wrestler's Court. But don't quote me on that. I just know that some of those punishments were brought over to the screen as well when you were brought up in the Wrestler's Court. And then they brought up how Xavier Woods had actually given Undertaker at TV one time that a gavel that was engraved with his name on it. I think it said like Judge Undertaker or something like that on there. And he said, yeah, she brought the gavel out and showed it and everything like that, which Wrestler's Court has always been one of those things we had always heard about or whatever. So this kind of just added a lot of credence and to all the stories we had heard about Wrestler's Court and how pretty much it was like the boys policing themselves backstage rather than having Vince McMahon take his time out to deal with every little thing and complaint.
Because plus in this business, you don't really want to have a lot of bad blood between guys, and especially if there's unresolved issues. Now the indies, I wouldn't say we're that organized. I can probably think of a handful of times where someone kind of spoke up on my behalf. Steve Stone being one of them. I'm trying to think. Armani also. I'm trying to think. Is there any case of who? I'm gonna ask you, Mustafa. Who would you say if there was like a Wisconsin Wrestler's Court? Who do you think would be the judge? Like, who had that much clout?
So, that's a good question. See, there's one who would do it, and there will be one that I think people would want to do it, and those are two different people. So as far as the person who would probably do it, I would have to probably say Frank DeFalco. person everybody would want to do it would be Armani.
Can you imagine the sentences he would give?
Jesus Christ, why am I even here? This is what we're arguing about, guys.
But you know what? We were talking about how much respect that, Rashi Brown pretty much commands. I could see him being kind of like the judge because,
Oh well, he's not here. I didn't think about him because of Arizona. He'll probably be somebody I would think would be up there.
Right. But yeah, mostly on the indies, if there's an issue, if it's big enough, maybe there might be some type of mediation, but it's nothing organized with like Wrestlers Court where you have to like pick someone to be your lawyer and then have a prosecutor and then have a judge hear it out. If anything, shit probably turned into shouting matches in the back, or fisticuffs, but wasn't nothing organized.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, nothing organized like that.
Did anybody chuckle inside when you heard that the prosecuting attorney was JBL?
Well, I've heard those. I've heard that story before of JBL being the prosecutor, and it's because he's kind of a dick. I'm trying to think. There's some other people that have been prosecutors. I forgot who they said normally they pick to be your defense attorney. I know they said that it's always a good policy to kind of grease the wheels a bit, to buy like the Undertaker like some whiskey or just basically try to bribe him, in other words.
Yeah, so that was pretty much the episode. I was disappointed that we didn't get the story. Hopefully they do more episodes, but I was disappointed that at least at the time of recording this, they haven't done it or announced it. But I want to know the truth about Undertaker taping up his hands and threatening Shawn Michaels prior to WrestleMania, about him putting over Stone Cold Steve Austin. What's some stories?
I'd like to hear some stories, some more stories about the Undertaker being on the road, because you can imagine he probably has plenty, like him and Bruce Pritchard getting lost, and basically like people's reactions to him. I like to hear those kind of stories, and maybe some more stories where, I don't know, people have challenged him physically. You don't hear too many stories of people like getting in his face and, I don't know, actually ready to throw hands with the Undertaker. You never hear stories about that. Maybe it never happened. But I don't know. I'd like to hear some more on the road stories.
I would also like to hear, just because we know part of the reason why Undertaker left WCW. And then earlier in this series, as far as the last ride, you have Vince McMahon joking with the Undertaker about the Giant Gonzalez. I would like to hear the story about him and Giant Gonzalez in WCW and the match at WrestleMania that they had and his feelings about it and everything that led into that match. I would like to get more of that story.
We can do a whole episode of Undertaker shooting on all the shitty guys he's ever had to wrestle.
Is there, Mustafa, anything that you want to hear from the Undertaker?
Nothing specifically. Maybe more so about his time before WWE. I know if you're ever at a wrestling show and you run into, what is his name? He used to be Jack Swagger's manager. I can't think of his name.
Dutch Mantel?
Yes, Dutch Mantel. Ask him to tell you some Mark Calloway stories. Because apparently he was the one who basically traveled with The Undertaker when he first started. So he'll probably have some good ones for you.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to hear some pre-WWE stories. I don't know if they'll go into that, but I want to see what it was like starting out for him. I know I've heard some Stone Cold stories about how it was like when he first started and, eating potatoes because he had no money otherwise. Like, what was it like for Undertaker breaking into the business?
Right. And I would also like to hear the story of what happened backstage after he was set on fire by the pyrotechnic guy at Elimination Chamber. I would like to see that animated. What happened to that guy?
They do him bogus. He be having like smoke things coming off of his body.
Yeah. So, other than that, we'll see if we have another episode in this series. Guys, go ahead and give out your social medias.
You can catch me at Xavier Mustafa on Facebook and on Twitter. You can catch my solo podcast, XM Cinema, wherever you're listening to your podcasts. You can also find my social medias for that at XM Cinema as well.
You can catch me on Facebook and Instagram at The Natural Chris Black. Also on Twitter at @the_natural CB. And be sure to check out my YouTube channel, The Natural Chris Black, the one-stop shop for all things New Japan Pro Wrestling, the best pro wrestling on the planet.
And of course, you're listening to this here on YouTube. Be sure to leave us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell so you're notified whenever new episodes go up. Also, be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast from. It's completely different content. So be sure to look us up on your iTunes, your Spotify, your Google, wherever you get your podcast from. And like I said, hit that subscribe, leave us a review, and we thank you very much for it. You can also catch us over on Facebook. Just search Saturday Night Slamcasters. You can also find me on Twitter. Just search Slamcaster TE78. Other than that, we up out of here. Holla at your boys. Come get slammed. Peace.